I got up, got ready for work, and hopped in the car to start my 1.5-hour commute. I'm driving my normal route, and about 35 minutes into my drive, I miss my exit when I couldn't get over in time. No big deal. I continue on and just let my GPS recalculate. It switches over to the next exit and even saved me a couple minutes. I was like, oh, nice, maybe I just found a secret shortcut to work. So at this point, I blindly follow the GPS as I'm still unfamiliar with a lot of the route, and I drive for another 20 or 25 minutes, and this is when it starts to get weird. I come up on a road that seems familiar to me for some reason, but I discount the feeling because of the off chance that maybe I had actually been there before. And I then turn onto the road and realize that it actually connects to the street my house is on. At this point, I'm thinking to myself, this is weird. How did I get turned around like that? I know I'm going to be late, so I call my boss and let him know that I made a mistake. I decide I might as well stop in at my house to let the dogs out quick and to go to the bathroom. As I approach the house, I look in the driveway, and my heart sinks. My car is in the driveway. Same license plate and everything. That's when I look down at the steering wheel and realize I'm driving my wife's car. I pull in the driveway and walk into the house. My wife was confused to see me because she knew I left for work not long ago. I was surprised to see that she was awake because she works night shift at the hospital. I asked her if she by chance saw me take her keys out of her purse to drive her car that day, so she grabs her purse, reaches in, and pulls her keys out. I then reach my hand into my pocket and pull out my keys for my car. How was I driving her car with my keys? Our cars are very different, but I guess the fobs are similar. I really have no choice but to discount it as a weird mix-up. I hop in my car to go to work this time, and I text my boss to let him know the situation. I get on the road, and this time I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss my exit. As I'm approaching the same exit I missed last time, I see emergency vehicles lining the road, and the exit is closed. There was apparently a car crash on the exit involving a semi-truck. The car that was in the accident was the same make and model as my car. I found this to be very unsettling. Again, I'm forced to drive a different route to work, and obviously I'm feeling very flustered by this point. I call my boss and again update him that I'll be even later, and he says, "No worries, you should still be able to make it in time for the meeting." I look at my clock, and it's if I was somehow still on time. I called my wife just to confirm that I wasn't losing my mind, and when I mentioned that I had just returned home, she tells me that I didn't come back after I initially left, and that she couldn't find her keys anywhere. It was at this point that I properly started to freak out. I checked my phone's previous calls and texts to my boss, and there was nothing. I never called or texted him. Do I need to go to the doctor? Update. For safe measure, I went out in the driveway and ran a test to make sure that the car would not start if I had the wrong keys, because I've heard of such things being possible with certain cars, but no luck. It didn't start. I switched cars and tested vice versa, and nothing. I appreciate everyone's support and ideas through this weird experience, and will update if I connect any of the dots. So far, I'm rationalizing it as some kind of false memory, or perhaps a lucid daydream, or some sort of dissociation, which doesn't necessarily make me feel any better. To people that are saying the experience is fake, the thing is, it might be. But it felt really real to me, and I'm just trying to be rational about it. Alright everyone, welcome back to more unexplainable and disturbing campfire stories from both viewer submissions and from the internet. Before we jump into today's stories, however, I want to begin with a little mystery of my own. And that mystery is, what the f*** was I thinking growing my hair out to my waist without trying to grow a beard? I only really started trying to grow my facial hair out around maybe a year ago, and even since then, I've neglected treating myself to a good trimmer. That is until Manscaped reached out to me and offered to send their Performance Package 5.0 Ultra for me to try out. Included in the package was Manscaped's Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, my new go-to trimmer. It features their amazing skin-safe blade head, which helps to dramatically reduce nicks and cuts you might get from other lower-quality trimmers. Also included in the performance package is their foil blade, which can shave body hair all the way down to the skin, if that's what you're into. On top of the Lawnmower 5.0 body hair trimmer, the package also includes the Weed Whacker 2.0 ear and nose hair trimmer, boxers, a very nice toiletry bag, Crop Soother post-shave lotion, and Crop Preserver deodorant for down there. Since we're covering Reddit stories today, I think a significant portion of us guys may need to give that crop preserver a thought or two. If you've been needing to step up your hygiene game a little bit, which I think a lot of us probably do, head over to manscaped.com/fortune to get 20% off the entire deal of the Performance Package 5.0. By using code FORTUNE at checkout, you will get that 20% off as well as free international shipping. Thank you so very much to Manscaped for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get back into more unexplainable stories. Grab a snack, get comfortable, and shut the blinds. I have a friend who is a trail ranger. He told me about this time he was gathering illegally placed wildlife cameras and knocking down hunting stands, feeders, and blinds with another actual ranger. The other ranger wasn't feeling well, so he said he was going to head back as it's a 1-hour ATV ride. My friend was just finishing up his work when he heard some voices. Keep in mind, he's far off the beaten path. He called out and no one replied. As it was getting dark, he started to head back and found that his ATV wouldn't start. He then noticed that the battery was not connected anymore. He reconnected it and started to drive, but it wasn't going fast at all. Less than a half-mile later, the whole thing died. He radioed back basically saying, "Hey guys, I need someone to come pick me up." They told him they would, but that it would be around an hour. He asked if the other guy got back yet, and they said no. He settled down and started a small fire, but before long, he heard voices again. It's dark. He is not happy. The voices sound like an argument now. Someone was angry and yelling at someone else who sounded more scared. He called out and asked if anyone needed help. The voices didn't seem to care. He guessed they had to be less than 1,000 feet away. He radioed again and said that they were having trouble finding what path he might be on and haven't left yet. He asked them just to get the other ranger to tell them about where they were because he left with the iPad that had the map on it. They said he still wasn't back. Not even 5 more minutes go by, and he hears the voices start up again. He decides to walk to them, hoping maybe they can stop being drunk assholes and maybe have a map. He walked in their direction, but the voices seemed to be getting further as he got closer. Finally, after 20 minutes, he gave up and walked back. He got a radio call, and they said that the other guy was found passed out, covered in vomit, and was being taken to the hospital, but that he had crossed off everywhere they found a stand, so they had a general idea of where he is. Then the radio died. He decided to listen to what the people were arguing about, picking up things like, "Well, it wasn't yours to take. I don't fucking care. You knew better," and so on. His guess was 2 hunters arguing over a kill. Then he heard one shout something unintelligible, then silence, then... A gunshot. He doused his fire and hid. After that, he heard nothing. Just his breathing for the next half hour until he saw ATV lights. He told the guy picking him up everything, and they called back. They had people looking for 3 hours and found nothing. They came back the next day with police and dogs. After about an hour, a shallow grave was found, and in it was a man, long since dead, who had clearly been shot in the face. The skeleton had clearly been there for years. So either the argument he heard just ended with a bang and both parties went home last night, or he heard the murder of someone from years ago. While walking through International Peace Gardens in Glendale, Utah, I noticed an elderly couple sitting on a bench facing away from me. As I walked around, I saw the little lady get up and walk around some bushes by the path I was on. She passed me and said hi. I said hello back. As I walked around the bushes, the little old Hispanic man was still talking. He looked up at me and kind of giggled and said he was just talking to his wife. I replied, "Oh, well, she just left to go to your car or something." I thought it was funny, this little old man still talking to himself, not realizing she had walked away. He looks at me and, in his broken English, tells me that she left a couple years ago, that she died. Surprised, I said, "Wait, I just said hi to her." He immediately pulled out his wallet and showed me pictures of her and explained to me how that was their favorite place in the world. It blew me away and brought me to tears. I sat with the man for a few minutes while he showed me more pictures of her, and then his kids and his grandkids, and how proud and happy he was, even though she was gone. He told me he still goes there because he can feel that she's there with him. So we were viewing her body at her wake. The three of us were her best friends and the last ones in line. One of us was stroking her hair and saying how peaceful she looked. She looked just like she was sleeping. Suddenly, we see her embalmed body that had been dead for a week start to take deep, slow, meditative breaths. At first, we were obviously in shock, staring at whatever was going on. After about 20 seconds, we all looked at each other, asking if we had all just seen the same thing. At that moment, another man approached the body and seemingly broke the spell. Immediately, she was inanimate again. We all went outside to smoke afterwards to discuss what we had seen. We all saw her breathe in and out for maybe 10 or 20 seconds. None of us ever spoke about it again, and I'm not sure exactly why. This was 22 years ago now, and I'm the only one still alive out of the three of us. I believe our friend was showing us that death is not the end. Fishing in the Chesapeake Bay years ago, out of sight of any land, suitcases started floating by. My old boss was convinced that there would be valuable things in them, so he pulled aside to pick one up. It was a small suitcase, and he said it was way heavier than it should be. He couldn't quite get it out of the water without risking falling in, so he gave up. The next day, there was a news report on suitcases washing up being found by boaters. Contained inside were body parts. Some woman had killed and dismembered her husband, stuck him into suitcases, and dumped them in the bay. Thank God my boss wasn't able to get it on board to open it. These next two stories come from the same hiker who sounds like they've been exploring the outdoors for quite a while now. From the comments they've made, It sounds like they're still hiking to this day, and after what they've gone through, I cannot imagine how they still feel comfortable out there. When I was 17 or so, I was backcountry backpacking in northern Minnesota with 2 friends for a week-long trip. On the second day of our journey, shortly after we began the hike for the day, we passed a guy with a huge black wolf dog, and he stopped and chatted with us briefly. He gave me ex-Marine or law enforcement vibes, but something about him and his dog made me feel uneasy. The dog kept whining and looking down the trail behind them, and the guy just seemed shifty and eager to get out of there. I noticed he had a pistol holstered at his hip, which didn't bother me at all, but what did bother me is that he seemed so on edge despite the security of a firearm. He told us he noticed a single, middle-aged male walking off-trail that morning in a dark green raincoat and just got bad vibes from the guy. Surely enough, later that day, the 3 of us noticed a figure in a dark green raincoat quickly step off the trail while we were walking on a long straight stretch, and we happened to glance behind us. For the next 2 days of our hike, we thought we kept seeing him only behind us, and thought we kept hearing footsteps in our campground at night. We took bathroom breaks together, never went anywhere alone, and it honestly really ruined the vibes of an already rainy and muddy hike. Every night we fell asleep damp and clutching knives, bear spray, and shovels like we were about to go out fighting. On the 3rd day of paranoia, we got to a campground filled with college-age girls, all being loud and overexcited and simultaneously scared of the woods. We thought sharing the camp would be good for safety. We warned them about the guy that we had been seeing, and their demeanor changed quite suddenly, and told us that they had been hiking for a few days from the opposite direction and had encountered a married couple that warned them of the same guy. We thought it would be safe with them, but that night, we woke up to a girl shrieking and then chaos breaking out. Something crashed away into the woods, and a few of the braver people in our camp popped out of their tents with flashlights and headlamps. It turned out someone had tried to open one of the solo tents on the edge of the camp, and the girl inside woke up to a figure crouching half inside her tent. She kicked at the figure, striking it, before it immediately ran away. Some girls were getting absolutely frantic. I decided to gather some people together to start a bonfire, which was nearly impossible given the wet wood. Luckily, I found a stand of rotten birch trees nearby and managed to harvest some bark for kindling, and had some people join me to keep watch until morning. We were supposed to have another 3 days on our hike, but decided to call it quits after that, and called our ride to come pick us up from a different trailhead. Again, this next story also comes from the same hiker. Honestly, I'm not sure which of these 2 is weirder. I was solo hiking in Michigan when I was around 24. It was an old-growth forest, a really beautiful region. The hike was pretty, but rather mundane and uneventful. I got a handgun for self-defense after the hysteria in Minnesota. It was supposed to be just 2 nights through a 12-mile loop of rather steep and hilly terrain. On my first night, 4 miles in, I got to my campground at the bottom of a valley. It was oddly still and quiet, no wind, and extremely cold for the season. There was supposed to be a creek running through the valley, but it had been dry, so I didn't have enough water for a good dinner, and ended up snacking and preserved my water for the next day. I simply couldn't sleep that night. It had been the first time I was solo backpacking, and I just felt vulnerable. I was maybe 20 meters off trail. It was so still and quiet out that I could hear random animals skittering about and the incessant whine of insects. I was laying there for what felt like hours when suddenly I realized there was no sound at all. No animals, no insects. It was like the world had been muted. That's when I realized the ground had started to rumble very gently. I perked up, and it sounded like there was a large group of people marching by. The familiar drum of boots on densely packed earth of a trail, but dozens upon dozens of pairs of feet. And the talking. It sounded like whispering at first, and then a cafeteria of people talking. Distant voices all saying and conversing, but not a word could be made out. I felt like I was going crazy, but I could even see my water bottle vibrating from the footsteps. It got closer and the voices got louder, but I couldn't make out a word. I checked my phone, and it was 2 a.m. My heart was pounding. What could people be doing out here in the dark? Even through my rainfly, I could see the dim light of the moonlit sky through the trees, but I couldn't see any flashlights or lamps. It sounded like 100 people were walking by. I was shaking so badly and was so scared when suddenly it stopped. My heart froze and my throat caught a lump. It felt like I was surrounded with 100 pairs of eyes on me. I chambered around in my pistol and took the safety off and just lay there, not daring to move. I waited and waited and waited. No animals, no insects, no wind. I continued to wait. Then, something exploded. It felt like my whole world erupted. A shockwave passed through my body and rocked my whole tent. I thought I had let my gun off at first, but all 15 of the rounds were still there. My ears were ringing. It sounded like a jet had passed by, with the sonic boom. I nearly pissed myself, and feeling a surge of adrenaline, I jumped out of the tent with my 10,000 lumen FQ flashlight and quickly swept the sparse woods surrounding my tent. I quickly dropped my pants and pissed right there with the pistol in one hand and my flashlight in the other. I felt so crazy. I finished up and leapt back into the tent, saw it was 4 a.m. on my phone, cried a little, and hid inside my sleeping bag again. I waited until morning and finished the rest of the 8 miles that day on 0 sleep. I haven't gone solo backpacking since. The year is 2006. You could get a home with a zero-down mortgage. Saturn and Pontiac owners have no idea their vehicles are about to go the way of the dodo. I'm working on a Tuesday night at Auntie Anne's in the mall, but at the secondary location as we had 2 stores. At about 7:30 p.m., a family dressed in very outdated clothing approached me. Like Great Depression, but clean. Dad, mom, boy, and girl. The dad ordered a pretzel, $2.64. He looked shocked that it was that much. He gave me $3 and I gave him change. They walked away without saying a word. I looked at the cash and saw that they were new, crisp, silver certificates from 1934. After a few seconds, I looked in both directions, and they were nowhere in sight. Not long enough for them to turn a corner. Nobody witnessed this transaction. It was just me and this time-traveling family. This post was made just one day ago to RBI, a subreddit where users go to ask for advice regarding dangerous, illicit, criminal, or unexplained situations. I live off a very out-of-the-way road in front of a massive rock quarry and right by the woods. Last night, at about 1:15, my wife and I were sitting in our driveway stargazing. We heard a woman screaming very loudly, "Please help me," and other stuff I couldn't make out, and the sounds of sobbing. I don't think it was anyone messing with us. It sounded very, very real. We bolted inside and left our dogs out in our panic. I called the police and they said they'd send someone out. After a little while, we grabbed our dogs very quickly and ran back inside. When we did this, I think I heard more screaming, and my wife thinks she might have heard a gunshot. We called the police again. Earlier in the night, we'd seen an ATV with a man and a woman, and when we got our dogs, my wife said they'd heard the ATV again. We haven't heard anything back. We called again to see if anything happened, and they said the police drove out there, but found nothing. I've been stressing out all day. I couldn't sleep until like 3 or 4 in the morning. I can still hear her screaming, replaying over and over and over. I don't know what to do or if I can even do anything. I was thinking about calling the police back out here just to talk to us and maybe check the woods with us, but I don't know if that's a good idea. This post immediately blew up, amassing hundreds of different replies containing different theories and questions, but so far, it doesn't seem like anything concrete has been found. OP tried contacting the police, but it doesn't sound like anything actually came of the call. There were some people in the replies saying that she should have gone and grabbed a gun and then tried to go out and run into the woods and help, but I don't think that would have been the right move. I mean, it's a really tricky situation because obviously if somebody really is out there, I don't know, you want to go and help them, but you can't just blindly run into the woods, not knowing what you're doing. And again, this person was a 21-year-old girl. I don't know if I mentioned that already, but she probably had no business running out there into a dangerous situation without any idea of how she was going to help. She definitely did the right thing by calling the police. Hopefully nothing tragic came of the situation, but unfortunately, we probably will never know. I recently went on a date with a guy from my school who I met on a dating app. He seemed super sweet and charming over text, so I agreed to go on a date with him. Especially after 2 friends told me they knew him from a class where he was a generally funny guy. We go to a small, pretty prestigious university, which also made me sure that he would be normal. He was supposed to meet me at 6 to go on a picnic, but ended up picking me up at 8:30 after having texted me to reschedule to 8. He drove me to his apartment, and although uncomfortable, I agreed to go in because of everything I already knew about him. The apartment was only lit with 1 candle and a small glowing light on the floor, which didn't add much. It was a multiple bedroom apartment that he lived in alone, which made it even more odd. We talked and ate some food, and he seemed nervous and uneasy for most of it. He suddenly switched the conversation to our deepest, darkest secrets, and asked if I'd ever seriously thought about killing anyone. After I said no, he made up a story about being in the Navy and having to bomb a ship and killing 5 people. When I was unsure how to respond, he sort of just passed it off as a joke and said that he had seriously thought about killing someone else, his ex's current boyfriend. I was extremely uncomfortable at this point and wanted to leave, and he agreed to drive me home. Before we left, though, he said he wanted to show something to me and pulled out a rifle that he pointed in my direction. When I got startled, he remained eerily calm and said he got it for hunting, but apparently couldn't think of even killing an animal. We left, and I got back to my friend's place safely. Everyone I've told has been flabbergasted about how the date went, and I can't shake the feeling that something was off about him, and it's creeping me out. To clarify, I mean, like, something sinister about him. Any thoughts on this would be appreciated. One of my best buds from college was a geologist major that ended up becoming a ranger in the southeast US. Haven't spoken in years, as is the case with age, but I remember about 8 or 9 years back, he was telling me about an old married couple that he had recently helped out. He had seen them come to the park several days in a row and found out they were visiting from out west, and they had gotten engaged there decades prior. They had been searching for a spot they'd taken pictures of where he popped the question, but were having trouble. After looking at the pictures and figuring out roughly where they were trying to get to, he escorted them in his vehicle, then hiked with them to where he thought it would be. They found it, and he left them there and went back to his station at the entrance. He said he got a weird feeling once he got back, and felt like he needed to wait to see them whenever they left. Well, once it came time to lock up at night, he still hadn't seen them leave, so he reported it, left his assistant to wait at the shack at the entrance, and went back to where he left them. He found both of them lying down, spooning along the bank of the river. Neither were alive. He called the cops, went through the 9 yards, and went home. The police were able to disclose to him their identities, but weren't sure of anything else initially. Later, he learned that the wife was terminally ill with cancer, and they had both ingested some sort of chemical or pill combination. They chose to leave this earth together at the exact spot they had promised to remain alongside each other forever.